Welcome to Talk of the Town, proudly brought to you by Uniquely Nelson. I'm your host, Chris Butler. With me, Simon Duffy, General Manager of Uniquely Nelson.
Good morning, Ru.
And Maureen, good morning to you, Chris and Simon.
We're coming to you from the Brook Sanctuary, new offices in Millers Acre, and joining us today, Ru Collin. And Ru, quite a recent move, because I only think I saw the truck yesterday.
Yeah, so we moved very quickly after our very successful tuatara reintroduction event on the 6th.
Oh, wow.
And we actually moved into these offices on the 11th and 12th and got persuaded to set up a pop-up shop to assist the NRDA and the cruise ship hosting.
Right in the middle of the move.
Yeah, that's right. And the first ship arrived the following day on the 13th.
Tuatara, a cruise ship.
Yeah.
Well done.
Baptism by fire. But so temporary set up until potentially negotiating a permanent home or a more permanent home?
Yeah, the reason for the sanctuary having a campaign office or a presence in town is really to help raise its awareness to the public that are obviously circulating amongst the CBD. So we need to be in a place where it's, reasonably popular. And with the new bus hub about to be installed down here on Millers Acre from sometime early next year, it's made sense to us, we thought, to get closer to the visitor experience. And potentially the Millers Acre could look at some sort of concept of being a visitor hub for the town, which would be something that would suit the sanctuary very well. So we're here on a short-term basis. Hopefully we can do something in the longer term.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's got a great feel to it, and it's great having people walking past and dropping in. We suspect we were going to always field a lot more questions than where we were previously, with the public coming in looking for all sorts of information and hints around, things that visitors ask about. Anyway, it's certainly going to be busy, and it's great being in a part of town that's got a lot of pedestrians.
Yeah, and you got summer coming?
Yeah. So we've got a big year coming up. Of course, the sanctuary's being driven along with introduction events like the tuatara, but we've also been working really hard at not just preparing the sanctuary, but getting it ready for the summer, if you like. Our MO, our modus operandi, is really to try and leave the sanctuary with our hands off, except when it comes to pest control. It includes plants, wasps, and then the mustelid and rodent threats. And what we're trying to just do is help the sanctuary present itself as a great place for the public to connect with nature.
It is, absolutely. It's stunning.
So we're very lucky in the fact that we have scale. The fenced area of the sanctuary is just about as big as the city of Nelson, and it's only 10 minutes from the middle of town. So it's easy to get to, and it's very local, and we're closely knit with the community, which we hope will just keep on growing, and that'll help to support the sanctuary in turn.
I always get that feeling it's sort of been here for the last 5 or 10 minutes, or the last 5-10 years, but you're having your 20th anniversary?
Yeah. So roughly speaking, talks about creating or the genesis of the sanctuary started about 2002. The sanctuary formed its body as a charitable trust in 2004. So, we're about 20 years officially.
Come a long way.
And we've just put a book together, which is basically a collection of stories and anecdotes and memories, particularly from the volunteers that helped start the sanctuary.
He's off to get the book. There you go.
Yep. And
this is great. I've flicked through it before.
Yeah. It's interesting, and the feedback so far is that people are picking up all sorts of new information that they didn't know. Now we're blessed with a core of volunteers that have been with us between 15 and 19 years, which is a long time, and even that group, if you like, are flicking through the book and picking up things that so it's good. It's a good way to store memories and thoughts before people move on from the sanctuary.
So was this something you did, or was it a particular?
Yeah, no, we ended up doing it.
Yeah, right.
And it took. We started planning for it 2 years ago, and we needed all 2 years to get a draft together.
Yeah.
Involved over 30 interviews and hundreds of hours of editing.
So
And,
do I see the name there? Michael Murphy, is that the
yeah.
author?
So
or the-
Mike's the author of this book.
Yeah.
And he had some help around a working committee and myself and the trust to help. But Mike more or less took on the project, and he's to be credited with a lot of putting that book together.
Yeah, because you tell us about the beginning as far as you're aware. I mean, I know there was a guy, David Butler. I remember his name, and I remember going to a few fundraisers and functions. But where did the seed of the idea come from, and why?
So the reason why I think this discussion began around the 2000s, certainly by 2002, is that people such as Dr. David Butler, which was, he was quite a famous ecologist, could see the potential of the ex-water reserve for the town that was just sitting there, because of course the town's water supply was fed by the brook until the 50s and 60s, and then the town outgrew the water supply, and so the town supply then got transferred to the Maitai, which left this catchment, if you like, and it's like a cupped hand, really doing nothing. So at about 2004, when the trust was formed, it was always, these sort of things always get formed by a coalition of the willing. In this case, it involved NMIT, the council, iwi, and interested individuals, particularly, for example, Dr. Dave.
Yeah, right.
And away they went and formed a trust, wrapped and attracted some very keen volunteers around them. And then over 10 years, from 2004 to 2014, made an attempt to try and clear or suppress the present pest populations down to a level that would allow an ecosystem to restore. At that point, at 2014, it was judged that that wasn't enough, and so that triggered the pest fence project to go into place. So something like 5 million had to go and get raised, 14.5 kilometre long fence, put in very tough, steep terrain.
Yep.
It took 2 years, so from 2014 to 16, 7,500 posts were mainly put in with the help of contractors and volunteers.
Yeah.
At 2017, then there was a chance to eradicate the pests inside the fenced area, which was undertaken in 2017 and 18. We sort of like what we call our darkest years, because there was an awful lot of angst and discussion around broadcast baiting of the land, which we were allowed to do, and we undertook it and did it. And we got caught up in the 1080 debate, which really we weren't using 1080. We used brodifacoum, which is a rat bait that is commonly stocked by supermarkets. However, we went through those 2 years. We probably spent more time with more focus on the courts and the New Zealand justice system than we did on what was going on in the sanctuary.
Yeah.
2019, we had a biosecurity system that was approved by the Department of Conservation. We were declared pest free.
Oh, wow.
So,
Yeah.
and then from that point, the rest is sort of history. And what I've been doing is trying to balance the inputs of restoring an ecosystem with visitor experience. And it's quite a fine balance, bringing both up, really to try and make sure we've got a sustainable project.
Had they kind of seen other sanctuaries or other concepts, in other places?
So
Is that where they got the idea from, or is it quite unique?
No, I think this is quite unique because of its location. For most of the 150 odd sanctuaries that have been established in the country, most are located in places where it's difficult to get people to.
Right, right.
Islands, difficult.
Yep.
This one was quite different because it was linked to a larger forested system like the Mount Richmond Forest Park. It's another 166,000 hectares in the backcountry behind the sanctuary. The sanctuary itself was big in size. We're the largest in the South Island and the second largest in the country at 700 or nearly 700 hectares fenced. And the third one this one was quite special because it was so close to the community.
Yes, that's right.
So out of about 150 sanctuaries, my numbers are a little rough, but there'll be about 10 sanctuaries that would offer a visitor experience, which we're one.
So, Ru, how did you come across the Brook Sanctuary? I mean, has this conservation always been in your blood, so to speak? Or
I think it is, Simon. I mean, where I come from, I was born and raised in the East Coast, North Island, Hawke's Bay, Heratonga, Tarawhiti, Gisborne, and my background's agribusiness. And I was very much an advocate of trying to adopt and promote growing systems that were in balance with nature. My association from Hawke's Bay to Whakatu Nelson was through the Whakatu Corporation, where I helped with their horticultural lands, and from that experience, I sort of got to pick a few awards, and I took a real interest in more to do with conservation. So how I ended up with the sanctuary is that I was sort of standing in the wrong place at the wrong time with a silly look on my face, and a Nelson and a trustee and a long-standing volunteer had a chat. It appealed to me, and I was selected to be a trustee on the Brook Waimārama Sanctuary Trust in 2017.
So you were living in Nelson. You hadn't moved from somewhere.
I'd moved from Mapua to Nelson in 2016, and so it was just a chance meeting, which led on to being considered as a trustee. So I was a trustee for 2 years, and then became the CE in 2019.
So have I got it right that originally it was more of a farming background, or had you just gone straight into the agriculture business?
No, I've got a farming background from my mother and father.
Yes,
and sort of, and the East Coast is generally rural.
Yes.
And certainly got a farming bent to it. So I also was a grower representative locally, regionally, and nationally, and that sort of opened me up to much more knowledge around primary industry, and not just growing fruit or fattening stock, for instance. There's a lot more to it than that.
But also, there's always that combination in rural land, isn't it, of the land that we produce on, but it's usually connected to, either the coast or the bush. And, especially these days, there's more and more advantages of preserving, especially around our waterways. And, farmers are getting more and more involved in that type of thing. So was that a connection is that how you kind of stumbled across it?
Yeah, so being European descent, the interest was really on what or how we could farm better.
Yeah,
because we only had one environment, and we always thought ourselves as stewards. But it really came into view when I got associated with Maori agribusiness, particularly around kaitiakitanga and the elements that are so important to think about with the environment. And the sanctuary really is a shot in a small way of restoring an ecosystem that I was lucky enough to enjoy traveling around New Zealand when I was much younger. You'll be able to see part of New Zealand in a natural state, slightly modified, but it'll be a wonderful thing to leave behind, particularly for the future generations. So that was another part of Maori agribusiness, thinking about what the future generations needed from the present. And that really, we were just gatekeepers for the future generations. Yeah. So, it's a really, really important sort of worldly point of view to adopt.
So some of your key objectives is obviously big bold is conservation, not only of the land, but obviously because of birds. Because I think I spoke to you a couple of months ago. I noticed I rang you up, and I thought I've heard of, was it a bell? I'd heard something in our backyard which you hadn't heard for years and years. And you apply to that as you get a lot more there of people coming to you going, we're hearing stuff outside of the sanctuary, because I'd be about 2 kilometres away from the sanctuary. I'm over the hill from it. But the key objectives seem to be being met. But what are some of your key achievements in the last, because tuatara has just been introduced, the last 2 or 3 years, now that you've got the shell of it, and you pass all the the political side of it, and you get right into conservation, which is where you're at. What have been this for you in the last 2 or 3 years? Some real key points.
So
that have really punched through for you.
That's a good question. The principal purpose of the sanctuary through the trust is to restore an ecosystem. But there are other secondary parts to what's really pushing us along. One is the engagement with the community, and two of the features that I'm particularly proud of is that our membership base has grown tenfold in 5 years, and that the visitor numbers have also grown fourfold in the same time. Went from about 7,000 a year to last year at about 28,000 people.
Is that a mixture of international and domestic?
International, locals, and other Kiwis. What we would call nationals, really. So those are two great sort of litmus tests for us. Is the community interest, and also our supporter base. The volunteer base has risen to about 350 people, which is another seems to be quite a unique feature of the sanctuary compared to others, where we have a lot of very keen volunteers. And again, that's something to do with being the proximity, but also the camaraderie that is sort of offered with people coming up and helping.
And there's a lot of that, I suppose, within our own community, especially in Nelson. There's a lot of people in that space anyway who have the same ethos. And the same.
So I think I can almost safely say that I think the average age of our volunteer pool is coming down, which means more younger people are getting involved. And our oldest volunteers over 90, 90 years, and still going. And we've got plenty of so-called elderly volunteers that are very fit and very active. So the other point to make, Simon, is that we're also here to support and really expand the halo effect. So of that 690 hectare that we've got fenced, if you look at us as a crucible, like a nest, and particularly with bird populations that can disperse in time as the populations build in the sanctuary, they'll start dispersing outside the fence, and you're getting into your neighbouring lands. And that's what we call the halo effect. So in theory, our 700 hectare one day should positively affect something like 100,000 hectares around us, which means it's going to touch Nelson, Stoke, might get down to Richmond, but particularly the lands around it and into the backcountry, particularly that Mount Richmond Forest Park. So that's starting to happen, and you're getting these anecdotal comments like, I'm hearing this sort of bird call, or I've seen this sort of bird, or I'm seeing many more individuals of a species, that I might have seen once or twice every 6 months. Now I'm seeing, 3 or 4 every month, sort of thing, and you're getting more and more of that coming through. The other signals that the ecosystem is recovering and restoring is examples like lost fungi, lost or orchids that are coming
Oh,
back.
okay, right.
Of course, you've got your signature plants like mistletoe. Mistletoe is now coming back into the sanctuary because of the absence of possum.
Yep.
And the pests that we have success. We've got 19 pests out of the site, and we're very vigilant, particularly on rat and mustelid. And most of this area seems to be about weasels.
Yeah,
Weasels,
that's right.
weasels and stoats are
Yeah.
particularly, we're particularly nervous of, and for the time that the sanctuary's been fenced and cared pest free, we've never caught a rat, never caught a possum or a cat in the sanctuary. We are seeing much more presence of cats, and that's going to be a problem that'll have to be managed in some way, in the foreseeable future.
Of them coming into the sanctuary.
Yeah. I mean, cats are apex killers. One of the few species that kill for fun. And there's a lot of domestic cats in any New Zealand community, any New Zealand suburb, and that includes the Richmond Range behind Nelson Stoke and Richmond. So, they're a latent threat, and we're always vigilant. We haven't caught one yet. I hope we never do.
They climb fences.
Oh yeah, that. I mean, we have rules where we try and keep vehicles or anything that a cat might gain a purchase.
Yeah, right.
To help jump over the fence. So we have a 4-meter gap, if you like, and that's the reason why we sort of insist on applying those sorts of rules, and when people are close to the sanctuary.
Yeah.
I've got a quirky question. Well, it's not quirky. I find it quite interesting myself. But I want to ask you: do the birds talk to each other? This is where I'm going with that. Is because you've got the sanctuary, are more native birds coming in where you've been doing introduction of new species, whether it be lizards or birds? Are they coming in because they know it's a safe place? Is that a natural them to seek? You know what I'm saying? That you're getting more native birds coming in because they know it's a safe place.
Yeah,
not that they're talking to each other at all, saying, "Hey, come across this side of the fence."
On that, I'm not sure. We've been monitoring our endemic, or the populations that have always been in the sanctuary, and we've got a very good database with a small team that do regular bird call listening counts, 5-minute bird listening sessions that they'll do at regular times through the year. And the populations are going up and down in some of the species, but generally speaking, we're seeing a general improvement of the populations that you'd expect they would increase.
Yeah.
Whether more native species are getting attracted to the populations or not, I can't answer that. Some quite like dispersing, some like being in a flock. I can't really answer that with any real confidence, but one thing we do notice is that as more native species generally build, you'll see exotic species getting reduced. Like you're seeing less sparrow, blackbird, that sort of species. I've seen that. And then, of course, we're getting more of those endemic species spreading across the sanctuary. When there was no pest control, particularly rats and rodents would push the native species up the altitudes. And we're the highest we've got the highest altitude for a sanctuary in the country, which is just under 900 meters. As far as I know, about 800 meters, rats don't bother pushing up too much further because there's plenty of food supply at lower altitudes.
Too cold, isn't it?
And so when the really heavily pest pressure applied to the sanctuary lands, a lot of those endemic species all got pushed to the top. So remove the rats and keep them removed. And over time, what's happening is what we're really starting to see, and it's obvious now that the tomtit populations and riflemen and the species that were pushed further up are all starting to flutter and come back down the valley to the low altitudes. We are starting to see South Island robin around the visitor centre, which is at about 100 meters. So it hasn't taken long, but it's another signal that what we're doing is working.
We had a catch up with Natureland not so long ago on the meerkat cage. Actually, it was quite fun, but they're talking about the conservation work that they're doing by, introducing bird back into forest, and not so much into Abel Tasman because that was in pretty good order, but just working with other partners. So with the Tuatara program, was there a connection with them at all?
Yeah, so we're working more with Natureland. The staff are great to deal with.
Yeah.
For instance, we're supplying browse or native bush plants that can be fed to kaka.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So that's to help with the kaka population breeding program that Natureland have got. In return, the Natureland staff are helping monitoring lines, and then they were really helpful with the Tuatara event and collecting and bringing them on. So we're working with them more and more. I mean, Natureland have some native species along with the exotic offerings like the things you're talking about, whereas we're really quite specific about native species. Yeah, but no, it's a good working relationship.
And
it's growing all the time.
Iwi heavily involved with the Tuatara program as well. So, those types of partnerships very important.
Yeah. The relationships to the sanctuary that link sending iwi and receiving iwi are really important to us. I separate iwi into two parts. Iwi Maori into two parts, and when we talk about native species, although the final approval comes through the Department of Conservation for most native species that you want to move around New Zealand, say from point A to point B, it's not done in isolation, and it's very important that iwi are comfortable with what species is about to be translocated where. So we work more closer all the time with Titauhu, or the top of the south iwi, and also the sending iwi, wherever that might be. For a lot of our species, being based in the South Island and Ngāi Tahu Takiwā boundaries is about 90% of the South Island, you can pretty much bet that the sending iwi will probably involve Ngāi Tahu.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by sending and receiving iwi.
Yeah. Some of the challenges that you have to face, I mean, obviously there's two parts to the question, because sometimes the challenge is the enjoyment, but there's probably some challenges you might not enjoy. But tell us about the main challenge for you, but also what you enjoy the most.
Yeah, so the two or three big challenges for us is making sure that the project is self-sustainable and that it can continue no matter what's thrown at it. The funding and search for particularly untagged monies versus tagged monies is getting more and more difficult every year, particularly since the COVID period. And I look at the sanctuary as yet another litmus test with how much discretionary income there is in the community at any one time. And when there's plenty of discretionary income around, there's generally a little bit more money made available to the sanctuary. And then you have years like this and the immediate future where discretionary income is tightening, and we're seeing that tightening too. So why I had to make the distinction about tagged and untagged is, if you want to build a bridge, find somebody who wants to help, and they tag the money that they give you to help build that bridge, that's relatively speaking easier to secure than here's a sum of money to go and operate the sanctuary with, which basically turns on the lights, pays the wages, and gets our teams out protecting the sanctuary. So that's two, and then the third one is always adverse events.
Yeah, right. Yes,
and being in tough, steep, unstable territory or terrain, and the absolute necessity that pest fence that surrounds the sanctuary is kept in tip-top condition. We have a fair few challenges making sure that it happens.
Yeah.
A good example was the August atmospheric river storms that happened in 2022. And to give you some idea of what we're sort of facing is that I think my numbers are right. I know they're close. Over that 4-day period, we just had steady rain. 180 mils of rain was recorded at the airport. Guess what we recorded up at the sanctuary? 750.
Right. Yeah.
And for the whole year, we had nearly 2 meters of rain.
Yeah.
And
Should be swimming.
yeah, and and thanks to our dedicated small team of staff and the volunteer team, particularly the response team, the fence held. We didn't get serious breaches, and although we were faced with 6 months worth of digging and repairing after that event, but that's the sort of adverse event that can really affect the sanctuary. And the last thing we can have is a serious breach over a long period of time, because if you get overrun with pests in this sort of system again, then you're sort of looking a little bit like a snakes and ladders game, where you can slip quite quickly back to the start.
Right.
Yeah. And backwards.
And very tough.
Yeah. Yeah.
So those are the three sort of things that concern me most: the sustainability, the adverse events, and the
But you obviously still get out of bed every day and go and do it. But because now you're CE, so you were on the board, and then obviously you quit the board, but now you've taken on the job of being CE.
Yeah.
So it's hardly retirement, Ru. And so you must get something out of this. What do you get the most out of being involved in something like this?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a community project large enough to actually shift the scale, the dial a bit, particularly locally, and being very much part of a successful community project where we are going to leave something of value to the future generations means a lot to me. And if I can leave a little bit of New Zealand in a condition that I've enjoyed, 40 years ago when I could see that easily, which is just a reflection on how the environment's been treated since those 40 years, then that's a good thing to be. So I get a lot of satisfaction and enjoyment out of meeting these various achievements.
We've talked about the close proximity. We were so close, we're 10 minutes from the city. From Nelson City, being so close to the sanctuary would be an important part of your network. What do you enjoy most about the city, but also what would you like to see happen to enhance the city, especially with actually the knock-on effect for the Brook Sanctuary?
So the sanctuary and the health of the CBD, I believe, got a direct relationship.
Go hand in hand.
Yeah, they go hand in hand, and we see that time and time again with our visitor numbers. And for us, we try and work with entities like yourselves, and other parties in the CBD and the Nelson, city, if you like, that are committed to try and make things better. We would very much like to see Nelson promoted better, not just nationally but locally, bearing in mind that 85% of our trade is based on locals. And when we say locals, we apply that term to both Nelsonians and
Tasmanians. Is that what you call
people from Tasman and
the Aussies might object, but
With Marlborough, West Coast, local.
Why we say Nelson and Tasman, we treat them locally, and we actually charge them basically those two areas, if you like, of the region as locals as a half rate. So we'd like to see much more promotion. We are very keen to become a key visitor destination, and we think that we're relatively speaking, we're quite unique, and we've got something really to offer. It's just a matter of making sure that we coordinate with good efforts that are already being underway, and we don't work in isolation.
Yep.
For me, a lot of the visitors that arrive in this top of the south part of the region tend to head toward the Tasman parks, national parks, and we've got to lift Nelson's game to help attract more people to turn left at the airport than turning right. We want to be part of that sort of thing.
Very good. So what are you working on at the moment? What do you need the public to know? How can they help? How can they get involved? And also, what can you experience up there? I mean, if Joe Blow wants to go and have a look, what can they do?
Okay, so in terms of what's going on up there, the walking track network is the big feature, and being able to access an ecosystem that is coming back at a very affordable rate is something that people can enjoy. The walks can range from half an hour to 5 hours. We're increasing our walking network every year, and our recent walk that we've introduced will be able to track the genesis of the Brook stream, or what we call the Brook, which is well inside the interior of the sanctuary, and walk basically back to the visitor centre, tracking that stream. There are something like at least 8 to 10 existing walks of different grades and difficulty, and that you'll see different parts of the sanctuary. In parts of the sanctuary, you'll see the Kakariki Karaka population. It was a very successful introduction between 21 and 23. And we've got about half the world's population flying around in there.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's just growing. And then it's not all about birds. There are a lot of people that are interested in plants. And over time, as we get more organised and more resourced, we'll start offering specific walks for mycologists, fungi walks, special events that are happening in the sanctuary, and start putting together something that we can do something special just about most months of the year. We're now in the sort of beginnings of all that, and at the moment I'm just trying to secure enough guides to meet the demand that we want to put out there, so people can book, and we can host them, we can service them well. The main track that most people walk is this 30 to 40 minute walk, or what we call the lower loop track, which is it's wheelchair accessible. It's a nice metal surface, and you get a chance to see a lot of the endemic populations that are there. But also, we've been working hard with our relationships between the local arts and culture sector, and so we have landed art pieces dotted around the walk.
Right. Awesome.
This is where our glowworm walks are in the winter, and it's also part of the track. Will walk past the mouse-free exclosure where our tuatara are now based. So in time, we should be seeing tuatara from along that walk. It's not going to happen overnight. The tuatara it'll be years down the track. That's the effect that we're trying to create.
Beautiful.
And so what, how can people help? How can they get involved?
Yeah, so there's 3 or 4 ways. Firstly, if people want to volunteer their time, we've got a great team that can help with onboarding. It's a matter of calling us in some formal fashion, whether it's the phone or the email, and we're always looking and helping bring and onboard new volunteers. Direct funding is really top of mind for me, and if there's anybody out there that wants to know more about supporting the sanctuary in that fashion, please contact me. And then there are other mechanisms, like we have a Sanctuary Foundation Trust, which is basically a mechanism to leave monies that are managed. And it's really more like a long-term mechanism, but we have that. And then there are other legacy sort of mechanism. So we've got half a dozen different ways you can help. And in most of, they're actually explained pretty well on our website. Just type in brooksanctuary.org.nz and it'll come up. And the other thing, I guess, is to keep an eye out on our Facebook and social media channels when we're doing events.
Yeah.
So, for instance, last night we enjoyed a sanctuary-inspired beer at the Free House, to honour the tuatara.
Oh, right.
And it had an apricot sour taste to it. So all I've heard is that the went off pretty well.
Oh, right.
So, we love to see public at those sorts of things.
Yeah.
And we have, other fundraising events like bingo nights and things like that. And then, of course, our open days, which are big events for us that we undertake twice a year. So when people see that something's on for the sanctuary, get part of it.
There's something going on.
Yeah, we are pretty busy, and may long, that continue.
Yeah, and I think you're right, Ru. I mean, it's now really become an integral part, probably, still a little bit under the radar. It's a hidden gem in a way, right in our own backyard, right on our city doorstep. And, for those locals that haven't had a chance to go and experience it, I remember the early days, when I remember being part of Rotary and going up and digging tracks with WIF, and then there was the big fence drive and you'd have to sponsor a post and that was before the thing was even open. All of a sudden there was an information centre. So I haven't been up there for a while, so I must go and do that over the summer break and just get familiar with where it is now. And I'm sure a lot of locals would be surprised just what kind of work is going on there now. And the other thing too, to visitors to our region, as you point out, Abel Tasman's a big draw card, but geez, what a great way to attract them into Nelson City.
On the other side.
And
just up the road, Paradise just up the road. So
there's just a couple of things I'd like to point out on that, is that we have had fantastic feedback about the developments that have come through, particularly in the last few years, with our enhancement of the visitor centre.
Yeah.
And that being the only point that's in and out of that takes people in and out of the sanctuary. The other feature I ought to put a plug in for is that we've taken over the Brook Valley campground. We've renamed it as the Brook Valley Holiday Reserve. And what we're going to do is subtly apply some of the sanctuary over the camping ground site to give people a better experience. And the idea is that not only you can see the sanctuary, but you also stay up there. The neighbouring campground. And it's another way of people spending one more night in Nelson. So the campground is at the end of the road, and the sanctuary is located directly behind the campground. So to get to the sanctuary, you've got to drive through the camping area. And we're just in the middle of making some improvements and enhancements that hopefully we'll have mostly done by Christmas when it gets busy.
So people can stay there.
Yep. We've got powered and non-powered sites. We're going to feature some of the murals that we introduced into the sanctuary. The same style will be applied across some of the buildings in the camping area. So we're just sort of lifting the place a bit to make it.
And so how does that work, Ru? So now that you're running the campsite, so that's an income generating measure for the sanctuary? Well, that's great idea.
This is one of the things that we can do, providing we do make a surplus, is that we've got to be more self-sustainable. And this is a hard way. This is a hard way of doing it, by the way, Chris. It's not. It's the running campgrounds isn't easy. But I've got we've got a good camp team. We've got a good reason for why we're doing this, because we want to see the surpluses help with the sanctuary. Council, Nelson City Council, the owners, are great to deal with so far, and I'm sure we'll make a few mistakes along the way, but that so far the first 6 months seen quite a lot of change and improvements being made, and hopefully that's going to pay off in the summer when, we start getting really full.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. All right. Well, thanks very much, Ru. That's, it's an amazing project. It's amazing to see where it is today and still soldiering on. It's a tough challenge to take on, but, well worth it. And I think, as you say, in generations to come, it's just going to be an amazing part of Nelson, basically, isn't it? Yeah. So
you talked about what you could, your contribution. There will be a legacy of you left in that sanctuary. The improvements in the last 3 or 4 years and where it's going, it's like it's left home, and it's standing on its own 2 feet. And that's a lot, obviously putting down to you, Ru, and the dedicated team working for you, the volunteers. It is a team thing.
Yeah,
so well done on that.
Oh, thanks very much. And it is a big team effort. And
huge team.
And I'm sure that it's all the effort's going to be worth it, in the future. So thanks very much.
Good stuff. Thank you very much. A heartfelt thank you to Ru from the Brook Sanctuary. You can find this podcast along with others at uniquelynelson.co.nz and talknelson.co.nz, and also on Spotify. Just look for Uniquely Nelson. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to join us next time for more from Talk of the Town. This is Chris Butler and Simon Duffy signing off. Till next time, Nelson.
Start the Brook, because that's what's going to be happening soon, and spend a lot of time in the sanctuary. That is beautifully sound.
Sure.
Thank you.